For as long as I can recall, Aliens has been my favorite movie, film of all time. As the sequel to the incredibly innovative sci-fi horror original, Aliens felt like upping the ante in every way. More budget, more aliens, more story to tell. With a bigger cast of characters, with great chemistry and arcs to follow, more intense action and peril, and of course plenty of modernized visuals, there's no shock that I, among many, believe that Aliens is not only the best movie to ever do it, but the best sequel ever made. However, there is this pesky subsection of the fans that believe that Aliens has bastardized what Aliens set out to do, fully ignoring the original's deeper themes in favor of the classic corporations are bad, or throwing out the tension and terror in favor of action, quantity over quality. Now, this divide among fans has been one that I lament. I fall on the side of bringing some action to Alien, even when the horror was so good. So, why is it when Capcom brings action to Resident Evil with Resident Evil 4 that I just couldn't get down with it? To me, Resident Evil 4 is Aliens, except it just didn't work for me in the same way that Aliens did. To set the stage, I love Resident Evil Remake and Resident Evil 2 Remake, with 2 specifically introducing us to Leon Kennedy, a rookie cop who is having a worse first day than I did when I started working at a Long John Silver's and A&W joint restaurant. Except there may actually be less crackheads in this game. RE2 juggles its story, combat, puzzles, and exploration near perfectly to craft an atmosphere that is intoxicating. And if I'm drunk on RE2, then RE4 is a glass of cold water to the face. Resident Evil 4 opens with Leon, now older, doing the absolute worst thing he can do, helping the President of the United States. Now, I buy that Leon has trained and evolved into a government agent, and it mostly shows through his gameplay. His close quarters and melee combat skills make Leon a force to be reckoned with in this game. However, as a 2006 and a 2008 Jeep owner, I gotta point something out. Leon's sprint in this game feels like his transmission has failed, trying to go faster, but he just never shifts gears. So when you hit a nice headshot or a leg shot on an enemy and they become stunned, it feels like he has no rush whatsoever to get that finisher actually done. He's just doing it for style. Now, where the game does have a bit more agency though is the story. We find ourselves in a seemingly remote village where I'm hearing more Spanish than I've ever heard in my life, except for that one time where a Karen complained about her drink being too cold at the local Mexican restaurant. The story's pretty simple at first. We're looking for the president's daughter, Ashley, who is actually a fairly big part of the game. I'll get to her in a minute in more of the gameplay, but I really like this hook. I feel like it can be patriotic enough, like, hey, one of ours was kidnapped. How can we get her back and keep her safe? And it's like a damsel in distress thing. It makes perfect sense. Of course, as you enter the village and you progress further and further into the story, you're seeing the castle and even the later sections of the game. More and more questions are going to be asked. And weirdly enough, in my opinion, the game doesn't give you a lot of answers until the end. That is one complaint I would say I have, is that the game is very backloaded with its lore reveals and information like that. I think the game handles the very early notes of, like, you know, kind of the day-to-day lives of these villagers as they succumb to this condition that they are in, this religious paranoia and everything like that. It's very, very cool. I love that. But then you get to the midway point of the game around the castle area, and where I believe we should start getting some answers to kind of, you know, quench that thirst of knowledge. We are actually just spinning our wheels with more information about kind of the local castle environment. One thing I will say though, I love the cast of characters within this game. Again, I wish we would have gotten some information at different points in the game, but characters like Leon are pretty well fleshed out. Ashley is a great secondary character. Characters like Luis, he's really cool. But that is where I will say one thing. One character in this game that makes absolutely no sense for her inclusion, both from a quality standpoint and from just a logistical standpoint, is Ada. Now, if you've seen my Resident Evil 2 video that I just did like a month or two ago, I loved Ada in Resident Evil 2. I really understood everything about her character. I liked it. And this game, mind you, I'm playing the Resident Evil 4 remake, is just atrocious. I have a couple notes here I'd like to read as I wrote them down. The voice acting is so bad that I was in denial. In my opinion, the voice acting is so bad that it's like when an actor dies and they use old dialogue that needs to be repurposed to kind of keep the character alive. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty scathing. Past self that I wrote that down at one point within the game. And the only other thing I'll say about Ada now that I've completed the story, I have not played the DLC yet, I will do that in a separate video, is her inclusion isn't necessary. She saves Leon a few times, I guess, in situations where it felt like he was already playing the idiot in those cutscenes. That's something that this game does a lot. Leon loses a lot in the cutscenes, where he never loses at all during the gameplay. It's very disappointing from a player standpoint to have all of these setbacks when we're not in control. I get that the game has to do that some way, but that's, again, neither here nor there. And every time that the game sets up a failure, who's there to save the day but Ada? So Ada only really feels like she's there to undercut our own failures, even though it's not ours technically. And while I believe this may get tied in better with the DLC, kind of seeing what she was up to during this time, or a continuation, I'm not really sure. I just don't really like her inclusion without playing the DLC as of right now. Continuing with the audio for a minute, this game's audio is incredible. The gunshots of the wide arsenal of guns throughout this game are incredible. The kicks and the punches, so satisfying to hear. You know, you've got the perfect Indiana Jones sound effects sometimes. And the game tells you so much, whether it's when you're sneaking and an enemy detects you, or maybe you're listening to see how far away an enemy is or what direction they're heading, or even listening for the little creaks of a treasure hanging from the ceiling somewhere that you need to shoot down. Whenever you hear these certain sound cues, you kind of go goblin mode, like you're just automatically you're locked in at seeing what you have to do, if that makes sense. And the game does a great job of shepherding you to that point. Another thing when talking about the quality of the experience, I think the visuals in this game are really, really good. All three of the major environments within the game are exceptionally well done, with a bunch of the side areas as well. The guns in the game also have incredible models as well. And as for a Resident Evil game, up until this point, this game has the best looking character models, animations, rigging, everything like that. I was fully immersed in this experience the whole time. I had great performance on my 9070 XT PC, and really visually and audio outside of Ada, I had no complaints with this game. This game is perfect in those regards. It's the most polished looking thing and playing thing that you've really felt, other than those few small gameplay tweaks I would make. But okay, I opened this video with a lot of negative things to say about Resident Evil 4, and I intend to back them up. So first off, we have the age-old complaint of quality and quantity, and how I believe it helped Aliens, but it will now hinder Resident Evil 4. I think the difference is, Aliens is still a 2.5 hour movie. This is a 13, 14, 15, 16 hour experience that you are playing through, and you're doing everything yourself. And at the end of the game, it shows you a breakdown of all of your stats throughout the game, and while it didn't express how many I did all at once, I broke down each chapter, and I killed over 600 enemies throughout the course of this game. That is insane. And a lot of them, whether it be the villagers, the cultists, or a great combination of other enemy types, a lot of them are very, very repetitive. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. You can fight them many different ways. You have a large arsenal that you're going to be cycling throughout the course of the game, due to a mechanic I also don't like, which I'll get into in just a moment. And I just feel it's numbing after a certain point in time. You always hear, you're seeing all these bad things on TV, the war, violence, one thing or another, and it's going to numb you. You're going to become blind to it to a certain degree, and that's what Resident Evil 4 feels like after a certain degree. Now, it does an excellent, and I mean this, excellent job at a few things. First off, when the game wants to have tension and horror, whether it be the early hours or a couple moments later throughout the story, they can still do it. It was super impressive that, Resident Evil 4, leading so far into the action, still managed to get a few scares out of me. And that, to me, are some of my favorite moments of this game and this franchise. I will say the main enemy that everyone talks about, that I won't be spoiling in this video, was a little bit of a letdown for me. They weren't that big of a deal, in my humble opinion. If you know, ultimately, but they were kind of a letdown. But really, though, I want to focus on that repetition, the things you're going to be doing. You're going to be countlessly roundhouse kicking, sumo slamming enemies, all of these different things. It's fun, and, the evil within fan within me was very satisfied to be, sneaking around a villager, stabbing people in the back, everything like that was great. The itch was there, it scratches the right itches, but I don't know, it just wasn't for me. I loved the opening section with the village, the first third of the game, I would say. But again, just like the notes and the story being told, section 2, the castle, was not for me. I did not like that. It was the worst section of the game for me. The environments were very bland. It felt like you were fighting the same couple enemies the whole time. And yeah, I was just not very happy with that section overall. Now, I mentioned it briefly, but there is a very large arsenal that you're working with throughout the course of the game, and the game kind of falters because of that. There's this really weird, mysterious dude. I don't really understand what's going on with him, but he's a merchant. You can find currency throughout the world, and even sell items that you find to get this currency, where you can buy weapons, upgrade them in all of the classic survival horror styled ways, but only through this currency. And yeah, I like the loop overall of getting a currency and doing this, but I don't know, something about the way it's like you're literally getting coins and, you buying stuff and you can sell stuff. Something about it just made it feel too much like a video game to me. So even if we're going to say this is an action experience, it now feels like an action video game, not an action, again, experience. This is even furthered by the fact that there are like these little like side objectives, like optional tasks that you can complete to get a different currency with the same merchant, where you can unlock one-time purchases with these extra materials. Inherently, in a video game, I like this, but in one that should be tinging on the side of, its atmosphere, its immersion, this just completely took it out of it for me, and again, I wasn't a big fan of it. Like, things as simple as, like, kill all the rats in the refinery, or shoot all the hanging medallions. Like, things like this are just, feels like a video game. It feels like an arcade experience. Or the shooting range, where you get a third currency, a token, where you can potentially get different charms, which are different stat increases or buffs for your case. Again, we're getting too nitty-gritty with it. There is a lot to this game. It's a pretty wide ocean in this one, and again, it expands in a lot of ways that are really, really satisfying. It's just those ways that take me out of the experience that I have to bitch about, because that's kind of like what I do. You know what I mean? I'm not a bitcher. The Bitcher 3 Wild, never mind. So I don't like the merchant, and while I like the action, especially with the little spritzings of horror, I don't like how much there is. I feel like this game is too long. There were easily a couple of combat scenarios that could have just been cut entirely. If you wanted to make it an exploration section still, that's fine, but I think it could have been done a little bit differently. Again, I'm kind of interested to see how the original RE4 was, because I've heard it's not as enemy intense like that because of the different controls. So I am a little curious about that. Maybe I'll go back for, the original Dead Space and the original Resident Evil 4 someday. But for right now, if we're talking remakes, Dead Space remake on the first replay, it blows Resident Evil 4 out of the water. In my opinion, as a Resident Evil fan, I like 2. I like 1. But man, this was like, if this was the genesis of where the franchise was going to go, I'm confident that if this was the game that came out in 2004 or whenever that was, or 2005, I would have said no. This is not my baby any longer. Now, I've focused a lot on the combat negatively. I do want to say this. The boss fights within the game, pretty much all of them, as well as the set pieces within this game, whether it be running around and having to avoid certain enemies or things like that, perfect. This game does it perfectly. Again, some of these lend even into the horror aspects, and some do not. Man, this game it juggles some of that stuff perfectly. So if I was already thinking this is like a lower score, a lot of this stuff brings it back up to still a great game for me. Outside of that, I do really love the pacing of the game. You're not going to get very much of the idea of those environments from Resident Evil 2, like the police station, where you're going to be going room to room, getting certain keys. And that is truly a shame. But I will say that for an action game, the game keeps pace so incredibly well. Whether you're going down corridors or you have some open environments, it feels like you're making a lot of movement and progression through them in a reasonable way. Again, I said that the inventory wasn't so much of a puzzle in this game. I'm going to have to assume that the original game or even higher difficulties are where this difficulty should have came from, because there's a game on my Steam account all about the Resident Evil 4 inventory system, where you have to, fit everything in the inventory in just the right way. And man, I don't know if it just auto sorts for you in Resident Evil 4 Remake, but I felt no tension from that at all. Like, yes, here and there, maybe I was like, all right, I'll go ahead and heal myself with a regular green herb instead of waiting for other stuff just so I can clear up a little bit of space. But most of the time, I was not feeling challenged at all. I never even used the inventory space at the save stations. And to me, that's a bit of a flaw. Like, this system is here to be used, and I never needed it. I was super efficient with my guns. I was cycling them in and out as I needed to, selling the ones that I'd already upgraded for that, that extra moolah. And yeah, I don't know. That's just me though. Now there's two things I want to end this video with. First off, I want to talk about Ashley. As a character that I knew is primarily going to be your follower within the game, I expected her to be annoying, get in the way, potentially be written poorly, and at the bare minimum, just for the sake of the gods and the gamer gods and how I feel, she was probably just going to be voiced annoyingly, just based off of Ada. I was wrong in every aspect. I thought Ashley's performance was great. I thought, while she didn't help that much in combat, she didn't get in the way either. And if anything, she was performed just well enough that whenever she got hurt or went down, I was wanting to go and help her just so she wasn't hurt. And that is one aspect of the immersion that I think the game did really, really well. I don't want to talk about Ashley for too long, but I think she's a great character, and I hope she shows up again. And finally, the last thing I want to say as I round this video down on this Alien Day 4/26 is that Resident Evil 4 is a good game. Do I think it's as good as Resident Evil 2 Remake? No. Do I think it's as good as the Resident Evil 1 Remake or HD Remake? No, I don't. But am I satisfied with where Leon went as a character and the story that is told? Yes. And even keeping in line with the Aliens comparison I made earlier, this game is a bug hunt through and through. It satisfies my sci-fi love. And with the tinges of horror, I think this is an absolute must-play experience. It's just one that I don't prefer over the other. And due to the game's length being so long, as opposed to pretty much every other Resident Evil, I don't know that I'll play this one again very soon, if ever, if I'm being honest. I mean, I like this experience. But if anything, if I want to go back, I might try the original. And for every quip or one-liner from Hudson's or Ripley herself in Aliens, I felt like Leon was going hit for hit with them. And for every badass moment that Ripley could have, Leon had those same moments in this game. It's just unfortunate that for those moments that Ripley may have been humbled, it would have been a moment of growth for her. Where in this game, Leon's just going to get saved by Ada, a character who is only there for plot. She felt like a walking plot device. It's a problem when she has bad voice acting. If she was still good, then maybe I'd feel differently. That being said, I really like this game. I love Aliens. I hope you had a good Alien Day. This is kind of the closest thing to an on-brand video I've ever had for this. And it's still not. It's just a Resident Evil 4 review. That being said, thank you for watching. Consider subscribing. And goodbye.